Hi folks, my name's Ian Abelson and I'm the Stewardship Manager for Six Rivers Land Conservancy. So we are a nonprofit land conservancy in southeast Michigan. We protect natural habitat throughout our 5-county service region. So that includes Oakland, Macomb, Lapeer, Genesee, and St. Clair counties. And for the StewTalk today, I want to kind of go back to astronomy. So one of our first StewTalks was on astronomy. I talked a little bit about the North Star for the most part, about where it is, how you use it as a navigational tool, why it works, all that sort of stuff. And for this video, I want to do kind of an introduction to the constellations because it's great to talk about the constellations. They're a fascinating subject. But before we can get into specific constellations, it's really helpful to kind of just talk about a history of them. Where did our list of constellations come from? And the science behind them a little bit as well. So the International Astronomical Union recognizes a list, an official list of 88 constellations. But throughout human history, there have been tons of them. And they're very cultural too. Different cultures have looked up in the sky and seen different things, mostly pictures that are attached to their mythologies and their beliefs in various ways. So for example, Chinese astronomy has a list of constellations that's very different from the list that we're used to today. The Native Americans had their own constellations that they recognized. Australian Aboriginal cultures had their own constellations. Incans had their constellations all over the globe. There were different people looking up into the sky and creating these pictures and these stories attached to them as well. But the constellations that we are most familiar with tend to be the ones that are in that official list by the International Astronomical Union. So of those constellations, the majority of them, about 48 of them, came from a list from the ancient Greeks. But the Greeks probably didn't create all of those constellations on their own. They were probably influenced by even older cultures. So the Sumerians, the Mesopotamians, they all probably had influence on the constellations that the Greeks recognized. And then the remainder of those constellations, the ones that aren't part of that Greek list, a lot of them come from European explorers in the 14th and 16th centuries that were mapping out the southern hemisphere because they were looking at parts of the sky that the Greeks had never really seen, so they didn't have any constellations to go along with them. It was really helpful, actually, for the Europeans to assign different constellations to different parts of the sky, because as cool as they are to look at from a mythological perspective, constellations were also really, really practical for navigation, especially for sailors. You know, if I am sailing on an unknown sea, it's a lot easier for me to think, okay, let's sail towards the constellation Cepheus for 70 nautical miles or something like that, than to keep in mind all the really specific mathematics that are required to go that same direction otherwise. So of the constellations in that list of 88, most of them are mammals. 17 of them are mythological beings from mostly from the Greeks. And then the remainder are inanimate objects. And again, a lot of those inanimate objects tend to be from the European explorers. So when they were adding to the list of constellations, they were mostly influenced by two things. First of all, the animals that they were finding and discovering in the southern hemisphere, at least from a European perspective. So the chameleon is a constellation in the southern hemisphere, for example. And then also by the navigational tools and scientific equipment that they were using during their explorations. So the telescope, the compass, the carpenter's level, all of those are constellations too, just because they were what these European explorers were familiar with. But even today, it's actually very handy for us from a mapping and navigational perspective to be able to use constellations. So we've not only got this official list of 88 constellations in the sky, but we've divided out the sky into 88 different sections. So what's called the celestial sphere, the way that we think of the night sky around the Earth, is divided into 88 sections. So, for example, I could tell you that the Spindle Galaxy is in the constellation Draco, and if you're also familiar with how the celestial sphere is divided, right there you know vaguely where the Spindle Galaxy is. Now, even though there are 88 constellations, if we are looking out into the night sky from Michigan, we're not going to see nearly that many on any given night for a couple different reasons. First of all, the ones that are far enough south in the celestial sphere, we will never be able to see from Michigan because they're basically behind the Earth from our perspective. Second of all, the constellations change a lot based on the time of night and the time of year. So there are constellations that we can pretty much always see in the sky from Michigan, and I want to talk about those first for the next astronomy video, because if you're going to learn the constellations, it's a good place to start. But other than that, a lot of them change with the night sky. And then on top of that, if you've got anything in the way in your horizon, say trees or buildings or anything like that, that's going to block some constellations from your view as well. Well, that's about what I had for this video. If you're interested in learning more about us as an organization, you can visit us online at www.sixriversrlc.org. And if you're interested in supporting our mission of protecting natural areas in Southeast Michigan, you can find a tab to donate there as well. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and take care.